so nervous and excited, I'm just going to read what he gave me. Jesse Bradley is from Orlando, Florida. He is the author of the upcoming novella, Bodies Made of Smoke, from Housefire 2012. He's the interviews editor of Pank, the falconer of fiction at NAP, once interviewed Emmanuel Lewis with a Pez dispenser, and lives at iHeartFailure.net. Also, he is awesome. Okay, so, J. Bradley.
Hey, y'all. Really? Let's try that again. Hold on. Hey, y'all. Hey. Fantastic. Let us go ahead and start the evening with something very, very serious. This is called On Writing How an Autobot Sunk the Titanic. I started with the idea of a time-traveling Autobot, but not as a time-traveling vehicle like a DeLorean or the jet car from The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. I needed a vehicle that looked domesticated yet unafraid to toss a catchphrase like, "Prepare to get grilled," before hitting evil in the face with its grill while in vehicle form. And I found it in the Dodge Caravan that accidentally hit Stephen King. I drew the Caravan on a sheet of paper, and using my pencil like the blade of a monarch, I knighted the drawing as Domesticus, the Autobot who is programmed to teach other Autobots home economics. This obviously made Domesticus a very, very sad Autobot because robots have no need for home economics. An easy motive for my metallic protagonist to feed on. I began the story in the middle, where Domesticus in his Dodge Caravan form raced toward Stephen King, trying to stop him before he thought of Dreamcatcher, the cause of the second Autobot Holocaust in the year 4137. As Domesticus roars towards the catalyst of his grandfather's destruction, his human captor, Brian Smith, accesses Domesticus's memory banks, and we see how we've reached this point. The poor attendance of Domesticus's home economic courses, his voracious appetite of reading that leads to his discovery of Dreamcatcher, and the devious binary code within the word shitweasels that annihilated almost all of the Autobots. His plan to steal Energon from Megatron and use it to fuel the time machine in the Ark to travel back to June 19th, 1999, 4:20 p.m., Lovell, Maine, to confront Stephen King and save his fellow Autobots from this horrible disaster. Then back in the present, Brian has this moment where he too can do something important after being regarded insignificant in his own life. I was almost tempted to make Brian a home economics teacher for a school of people who have no sense of taste or touch, but that would have been too heavy-handed. That's what gave Brian the strength to override Domesticus' control and aim him at King instead of toward King. It's even more poetic when Brian yells, "Prepare to get grilled," before hitting the accelerator, the very catchphrase Domesticus wanted to use in battle but never did. Because of Brian's monkeying around with Domesticus' circuitry and the impact of the accident, Domesticus' spark is then jarred out of his body and sucked into time. We then get a flash forward of Stephen King sitting behind a table at a Barnes & Noble in New York with stacks of Dreamcatchers surrounding him as people are lined up, waiting to get a signature. I used dialogue to show the audience how if it wasn't for the accident, he would have never written Dreamcatcher, thus illustrating one of those spiffy time paradoxes we writers use to teach an important lesson about how you can't change the past, only the present. But that wasn't enough. I had to make sure I drove the message home, so we got back to the Titanic veering toward the iceberg. Domesticus' spark, now inhabiting the Titanic, decided to defeat the iceberg, the representation of all of his fears and doubts. Domesticus finally gets to yell, "Prepare to get grilled," before realizing the iceberg was too impossible to best, so he just whispers, "Just kidding," before turning away. The iceberg still gashes the hull. Many people still die. Domesticus' spark fades away into nothing. To make sure the ending isn't quite as sad, I made sure that Celine Dion, aged 8, ends up trapped on the Titanic as it sinks. I used the classic technique of flashback to show Domesticus using the last bit of his spark to tell his present self to make sure he kidnaps Celine Dion in his travels and leave her in the Titanic before going to see Stephen King. The last image we see is the angel wings in Dion's cheeks clipped by Arctic water.